Do you have a piece that you can play almost perfectly, but every time you make a few mistakes in the same spots? There's an approach to practice that can solve this problem, and I'm going to demonstrate it for you. I picked a piece that I haven't played before, this piece by Chopin. Hopefully, I'll make some mistakes. Okay, that's very vulnerable to show on camera, but I intentionally chose something where I would make mistakes. My background is not primarily in classical music, so I haven't played this piece before, and I want to give an honest demonstration of how I would engage in this process. This was something I didn't really understand how to do until I got to college. What it really means to work with a piece using spot practice and practicing in a way where you're very deliberately learning a new piece of music without mistakes. Step one is to identify your problem spots. And if you don't have a teacher to help you identify those spots, it can be really helpful to take some video of yourself playing. I find this with students all the time that they don't even know where they're making the same mistakes. So take a quick video of yourself. Don't allow yourself a mulligan. Just take the first take and watch it back, as hard as that may be, and write down where in the piece you're having problems. Here, I'm going to identify this left hand in the second bar as a spot that was giving me particular trouble. Now we move to step two. We're going to start at that problem spot, and we're going to set ourselves a series of little challenges that slowly get harder. And I like to talk about the slow and simple sliders for this. So the idea is, imagine two sliders that set the difficulty level as if in a video game. And one of them is your tempo, so it goes from slow to fast. The other is complexity, so it goes from simple to complex. And usually the first thing we do for complexity is just changing the length of the excerpt, but you can also do things like taking hands separately or even modifying the music to make it simpler. So we're going to set ourselves a series of little challenges, starting with the slow and simple sliders all the way down, with the idea that we can do this perfectly on the first or second try. Every time we do this, we need to choose our start and stop points. And stopping where you intend to is, I think, the hardest thing here. You also need to choose your tempo. And if you read sheet music, you're welcome to follow along with me here if you haven't played this Chopin Nocturne. So I'm going to pick this second bar. I'm going to just play the left hand, and I'm going to try it around this tempo. Let's see. Okay, so I picked 45 BPM. That is really slow. But remember, I have to get it perfect on the first or second try. So I'm going to try playing this left hand, just the second bar, and I'll play through to the start of the third bar. Okay, so we had a good result. I did it exactly as I intended. And when that happens, you can do it again if you like. Maybe there's something about the expression of it that you'd like to try again, or you just want to feel comfortable. But I like to mix it up pretty quickly and just change something about one of our two sliders. And this helps me stay engaged. This is why I like doing it this way a little bit better than the practice technique where you just do something correctly 5 times in a row before you change anything. Because I find that my brain can get kind of tired of that if it seems like it's the same thing over and over again. And switching up just a little something every time keeps me a little more engaged. So I'm going to make it a little bit faster. Okay, so we're moving the slow to fast slider. I'm going to try it now at 50 BPM. Okay, so this is 50 BPM for the 8th note in this piece. Here we go. 2, 3. And so far, everything that I've done has come off successfully. So I'm going to push myself a little more now. Let's see if we can find my breaking point. So I'm going to put this at performance tempo or even a little faster. Let's put it at eighth note equals 140. And I'm going to do it hands together at this tempo. Let's see. Okay, so better than when I first sight read the music, but it was really sloppy. And I actually kept playing past where I meant to stop. So clearly this is now pushing me past where I can do this comfortably. I have less presence of mind. What I need to do now is pull the sliders back. I shot too far, and so I'm gonna bring it back down to a slower or simpler version of this part of the music. If I wanted, I could make a second attempt, but when it's clearly so far past what I'm comfortable with, I'm just gonna bring things back down. So you can see that there's kind of a decision tree here, right? It's almost like I'm conducting an experiment on myself. If I do it correctly, I'll push these sliders up a little bit. If I make a mistake on the first or second try, and I'm feeling uncomfortable with what I'm asking myself to do, I bring them back down. And this might make logical sense to you. It does to most students, but it's surprisingly difficult to do emotionally. Because if you play something that you're really comfortable with, that's a lot more enjoyable than sitting here right on the edge of something that you really have to try hard to do. If you play something that's much too challenging for you, like for me, sight reading both hands at performance tempo with this Chopin piece, that's also a little bit easier emotionally, I think, because you know that it's too hard for you. And so you can give yourself a break for all the mistakes you're making. So this approach to practice is really about grounding yourself in exactly where you are. What are you actually able to do exactly the way that you intend on the first or second try? And typically, students are surprised by how far down they have to pull the difficulty sliders to actually find that edge of their ability. And it just takes a lot of patience and a lot of presence to practice in this way. But what's thrilling is that this is also where you make the fastest progress. So a little bit of this kind of practice can solve problems in a piece that you've been wrestling with for months. Practice this way for 20 minutes a few days in a row, and suddenly it might be easy for you to play those challenging passages. Now let's go over some helpful pieces of guidance that often come up with students. One, keep in mind that the idea here is not to never make mistakes. People get afraid about this idea of ironing in mistakes. And yes, in a way, that's what we're trying to address. But there's actually good research that shows that making mistakes can be helpful to your learning process. The important thing is that you're aware of it when you make the mistakes. So really what we're doing here is not trying to get rid of mistakes. We're just zeroing in on a very well-defined goal for what we're trying to accomplish. You know, I'm starting here, I'm ending here, I'm playing at this tempo, and this is how I want it to sound. And when you define things that way and you focus in on such a short excerpt of the music, it becomes very easy to get this feedback loop of realizing when you make a mistake and fixing it. So the goal is not to never make mistakes. The goal is to make mistakes and to realize when that happens. Another important expectation to set. You want to embrace the challenging feeling of this kind of practice, because consider that it's never going to get easier. Right? The feeling of this kind of practice will never get easier. As you become a better musician, the challenges you're setting yourself will get harder. You'll be playing harder and harder pieces of music. But you're always going to be finding the edge of your own ability, right? You're going to be finding that next thing that's a little bit of a challenge for you to do, and you might get it on the first or second try. So that sensation always feels the same. So what you want is to embrace a mindset that what you're looking for in really high quality practice is this sensation of challenge and doing something that you think you can just about do, and you have to be really focused to do it. And honestly, once you get used to that feeling, it can be kind of addictive. That said, this does not need to be the only way you practice. So I like to say this kind of practice is like a scalpel. It's one useful tool, but it's a very kind of mechanical, methodical way of practicing. And you're welcome to also practice in ways that feel more musical. You know, this is kind of like zooming way in. You also want to zoom way out and just try playing the entire piece, or like Listen to a recording of the whole piece. Get a sense for the big picture of the musical landscape. And then use your scalpel and zoom way in and use this kind of step-by-step spot practice to solve problems. And the last helpful point is to sleep on it. The big returns here do not come in a single practice session. That's why I'm not going to now play you a perfected version of the Chopin Nocturne when I'm filming this all in one session, because you have to sleep on it for your brain to really make the changes where you can play something without thinking. And especially if you come back a few days in a row and do this kind of practice on a passage, you will be amazed by what your brain can do with that. But you want to think about it like you're telling your brain what changes to make while you're asleep. You're not expecting to get results in a single practice session. So there you have it, an introduction to the slow and simple sliders. I love this approach to practice, and I hope you get addicted to it as well. I'm Ted with Piano Fluency, and as always, you can go to my website for lessons, courses, and free resources. Thanks for joining me.